The storm came suddenly as if the city itself had decided to punish its people. Rain fell in thick sheets, drenching streets, twisting alleys into rivers and sending umbrellas tumbling down like broken sails. In one of those alleys, hidden under a flickering neon sign, a woman struggled to move. Her coat was soaked, clinging to her body, and her face bore the marks of a long fight. Every step she took was heavy, every breath a battle. Her name was Alara. She had no place to go, no one to call for help, and most of all, no one to protect her. Her child, a little boy with wide eyes and an innocent heart, was hidden safely in the shadow of a nearby doorway. She had to keep moving. She had to survive. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Heavy, menacing, too many to count. She froze. Her heart beat like a drum in her chest. She turned, only to see figures emerging from the darkness, faces twisted with anger, voices shouting in a language of threats. She wanted to run, but the storm and her exhaustion made every step a struggle. Then a roar of an engine cut through the rain. A black car slid to a stop at the end of the alley, tires skidding on wet pavement. From it stepped a man. He moved with the confidence of someone who owned the city, or at least the night. Tall, broad-shouldered, his dark coat trailing behind him like a shadow. His eyes were sharp, calculating, yet there was something in them that made the world pause. Dominic Veyron. He did not speak at first. He simply looked at Alara, and then at the men surrounding her. Time seemed to stretch. In a single motion he approached, and the men hesitated. Dominic's presence was enough. Strong, silent, and dangerous. "Step back," he said, his voice calm but firm. The men laughed. "And who will make us?" One of them sneered. Dominic's hand moved almost too fast to see. One moment his fist was at his side. The next a man flew across the alley, landing hard against the brick wall. Another tried to attack, only to be thrown backward with a force that seemed impossible. The remaining men, seeing their companions defeated without mercy, ran into the storm, disappearing into the night. Alara could barely believe what she had seen. She stood there trembling, rain dripping down her hair, feeling like she had just witnessed a force of nature. The man turned to her. "You're safe now," he said. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but her lips would not form the words. Her fear and exhaustion kept them locked. "Come," he said, holding out a hand, not in threat, but in invitation. "You can't stay here," she hesitated. Trust did not come easily. Not in her world. But she could feel something in him that was different, something that promised protection and not pain. She took his hand, letting him help her to the car. Inside, the warmth was immediate. The storm seemed distant, a memory. Dominic handed her a towel, silently instructing her to dry herself. His car smelled faintly of leather and something else, something clean, something controlled. "Where is your child?" he asked. After a moment, she froze again. How did he know? She swallowed hard. "Safe." "Nearby," she whispered. He nodded. "Good, I will not let anyone harm him. Or you." For a moment, silence filled the car, broken only by the sound of rain on the roof. Then she spoke. Why are you helping me?" Dominic's gaze was steady. "Because no one should be hunted like that. No one should feel helpless." Alara wanted to ask more, but the sound of approaching engines interrupted her thoughts. Dominic's eyes narrowed. He opened the door, stepping out into the storm again. She followed, curious and cautious. A black van stopped at the alley entrance, the door sliding open. Men poured out, armed and ready. Dominic did not panic. He moved like a shadow, precise, calm, and deadly. In moments, the attackers were incapacitated, groaning in the wet street, and Dominic returned to Alara's side. "Stay behind me," he said. "I will make sure nothing touches you." The power in his words was not just a promise. It was a command that carried the weight of someone who could make the world obey if he wished. She felt the pull of it, the safety, the impossible strength. He drove her to a place she could hardly imagine. A mansion, dark and imposing, lit with soft golden lights that reflected in the puddles outside. It was beautiful and dangerous, a place that seemed both a sanctuary and a fortress. He led her inside, where warmth and dry air wrapped around her like a gentle cloak. "This is where you will stay," Dominic said. "No one will touch you here." She looked at him, still unsure. Why me?" "Because," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Someone had to care. And I care." Her chest tightened. Care. It was a word she had not heard in years, a word that felt foreign and dangerous. She wanted to believe it, but fear held her back. Dominic noticed her hesitation. He did not push. He simply handed her a blanket and left her in the quiet warmth of the room. Outside, the storm continued, but inside, for the first time in weeks, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. She sat by the window, watching the rain pour down, thinking of her child hidden safely in the corner of a room nearby. She could feel the power of Dominic's protection like a shield around them, impenetrable and absolute. She wanted to trust him, but trust was not easy to give. Not after everything. Hours passed. The storm raged on. She finally allowed herself to rest, leaning against the soft cushions, her mind filled with questions. Who was this man? Why did he care for her? And what did it mean for the life she had tried so desperately to protect? Suddenly a sound broke the quiet. The faint noise of footsteps, deliberate and slow, approaching the mansion. Her heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed the blanket around her like armor. Dominic appeared at the doorway as if he had sensed her fear. "It's nothing," he said, his voice steady. But she could see the tension in his posture. His hand rested on the hilt of something hidden beneath his coat, a promise that he would protect her at any cost. The door opened. A figure from her past stepped inside, drenched and menacing, eyes filled with a purpose that made her blood run cold. Ilara's child stirred from sleep, sensing danger. Dominic's eyes burned with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. "No one," he said, his voice low and deadly, "will touch you again." Ilara felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear for what was coming, and relief that someone so powerful, so unstoppable, had chosen her to protect. She did not know what the night would bring, or what secrets this man held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she would survive. The storm raged outside, the mansion walls firm against it, and inside, a silent promise lingered in the air. She was safe for now. But the night was far from over, and the danger from her past was closer than she had realized. And as Dominic stood in the doorway, eyes dark and unwavering, she understood that her life had just changed forever. The rain slowed by morning, but the air inside the mansion was still heavy with tension. The storm had left puddles in the courtyard, glistening like dark mirrors, and every sound seemed louder in the silence that followed. Ilara sat near the fireplace, holding her son close. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the fear that had gripped his mother's heart. She stared into the flames, her mind spinning with questions. Who was the man who came last night? Why had Dominic's voice turned so cold when he saw him? And what did this all mean for her and her child? From the corner of the room, Dominic watched quietly. He had been awake all night. His coat still bore marks of the rain and the fight. His men had handled the intruder and sent him away, but Dominic knew it was not over. Trouble had only begun. When Ilara noticed him, she stood slowly. "Was that man from my past?" she asked softly. Dominic nodded. "Yes, he came looking for you." Her eyes widened. "Then he knows where we are?" "He knew," Dominic replied, walking closer, his tone calm but full of certainty. "He will not return. I gave him a warning he will not forget." Ilara wanted to believe him. There was power in his voice, steady, commanding, and unshakable, but fear still lingered in her chest. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He won't stop. People like him never stop." Dominic looked at her for a long moment. "Then I will make him stop." There was no pride in his words, only truth. The kind of truth that came from a man used to protecting what was his, no matter the cost. She wanted to thank him, but words felt small. Gratitude and fear mixed inside her, creating something new, something like hope. For days, she stayed in the mansion, recovering from her wounds. Dominic's people brought her food, warm clothes, and anything her son needed. They treated her with quiet respect, as if she were under the protection of a queen rather than a crime lord. But Ilara was not at peace. Every night she dreamed of the man who had hurt her, of running again through rain and darkness. And every time she woke up in fear, she found Dominic standing near the doorway, watching over her silently, like a guardian made of shadow and steel. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "Only when those under my care are safe," he said simply. His words stirred something deep within her. She didn't know if it was trust or something else, something she was afraid to name. One evening, Dominic found her in the garden behind the mansion. The storm had washed everything clean. The air smelled of earth and new beginnings. Ilara stood near a small fountain watching her son chase butterflies among the flowers. You could leave if you wanted to, Dominic said quietly behind her. She turned to him, surprised. What? You have that choice, he continued. I will not keep you here. You are safe now. You could start again somewhere far from this city. Her eyes searched his face. And if I leave? What happens to you? He smiled faintly in a sad, tired smile. Then I go back to being who I was before you came. Something in his tone made her heart ache. For the first time, she saw the loneliness behind his power, the emptiness behind his control. The man everyone feared was also a man who had forgotten what it meant to be human. You don't have to go back to that, she said softly. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. Sometimes the darkness doesn't let go. Ilara stepped closer. Maybe it does. If someone believes in you enough. Her words hung between them, fragile and warm. Dominic didn't reply, but something in his eyes changed, a spark of light breaking through years of shadow. That night, the peace shattered. An explosion echoed from the outer gates. The mansion shook, lights flickering. Dominic was already moving before the sound faded, barking orders to his men. Ilara grabbed her son, fear returning like a wave. They found us, she whispered. Dominic's voice was steady. Stay in this room. No matter what happens, do not open that door. But he cut her off gently. Trust me, Ilara. Then he was gone. Outside, chaos unfolded. Dominic's men fought off intruders who had broken through the walls. The attackers were armed and desperate, the same people who had hunted Ilara before. Their leader shouted her name in the stormy night, promising vengeance. Ilara clutched her son tightly, tears streaming down her face. She could hear Dominic's voice through the noise, calm, commanding, unbreakable. He was everywhere at once, protecting, fighting, leading, but the enemies were too many. A window shattered. A man forced his way into the room. Ilara screamed, shielding her child. Before the intruder could move further, a shot echoed. He fell. Dominic stood in the doorway, smoke rising from the gun in his hand. His eyes met hers, fierce, full of worry and something else, something deeper. I told you, he said quietly. No one will touch you again. He helped her to her feet, his hands gentle. Are you hurt? She shook her head, tears falling freely. You could have been killed. Then it would have been for something worth dying for, he said simply. Her heart broke at his calm tone. In that moment, she realized how much he had risked, not just his life, but his soul. By dawn, it was over. The attackers were gone. The mansion stood damaged but safe. Dominic's men tended to their wounds, silent and loyal. Ilara found Dominic in the courtyard, leaning against a wall, blood on his sleeve but refusing treatment. She walked up to him, her son holding her hand. You saved us, she said quietly. He looked at her, exhaustion in his eyes. You saved me first, he replied. She frowned. How? You reminded me I could still be human, he said. That I could protect, not destroy. Tears welled in her eyes again. And now? He smiled faintly. Now you go live your life. You don't belong in my world, she shook her head. Maybe I don't belong to your world, but you belong in mine. For a long time, neither spoke. The morning light broke through the clouds, turning the broken courtyard golden. The air smelled of rain and smoke, but also of something pure. Renewal. Dominic finally stood straight. If you stay, the world will judge you for being near me. Then let them judge, she said softly. They don't know who you really are. He looked at her as if seeing hope for the first time. The man who had once ruled through fear now felt something stronger. Love that did not demand but healed. He reached for her hand, slowly, uncertainly, as if afraid she might pull away. But she didn't. She held his hand tightly, grounding him in a reality he had forgotten. You don't have to walk in the shadows forever, she whispered. And you, he said with a faint smile, don't have to run anymore. Days turned into weeks. The mansion was repaired. The rain stopped. Life began to take a gentler rhythm. Ilara's son laughed freely now, playing in the courtyard, watched over by Dominic's men who had grown fond of him. Sometimes, Ilara caught Dominic watching from the balcony, his usual steel expression softening when his eyes met hers. He didn't speak much, but his silence said enough. He had found peace, and perhaps a reason to keep living. One evening, as the sun set behind the city, Ilara joined him on the balcony. Do you ever miss your old life? She asked. Dominic shook his head. I thought power was everything, he said. But it was only noise. You taught me what real strength looks like. She smiled gently. And what is that? He turned to her, his gaze warm and steady. Protecting without control. Loving without fear. The wind carried their silence, filled with understanding. Below them, the lights of the city flickered on, a world that still held danger and darkness, but also hope. Ilara looked at him. What happens now? Dominic took her hand once more. Now, he said softly, we begin again. The storm had come to break them, but it had also washed away everything false. What remained was something fragile yet unshakable. Two souls, scarred but not broken, finding peace in each other's light. Dominic Veyron, the feared Mafia boss, had found redemption not in power but in love. And Ilara, the wounded mother who had run through the storm, had found her home, not in walls or riches but in a man who finally kept his promise. No one would ever touch her again.